This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you know Mr. Scott Wells, but if any of you listen to podcasts, he's got one of the best podcasts around. It's called The Magic Word. He travels all over the country speaking to magicians, and he's also a performer. He's performed at the world-famous Magic Castle, he's performed at the Magic Island, and he's performed in Las Vegas. But with all these travels and stuff, love, he always has time to be able to take the people that he meets and put together a lecture circuit. So if you ever have lectures in your community, they're probably responsible for Mr. Scott Wells. So ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and welcome our host for this evening. You're about to enjoy some great conversation with Mr. Scott Wells.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you, Randy. And thank everyone for coming here to this evening, then to the Senior Tour 2023. I knew it was a Senior Tour because whenever I came in, the first thing they asked for, not an IBM card, but they asked for my AARP card. So now I get it. And I kind of look around, it's like my people, you know. So this is great. It just looks like I think another word for this might be the diminishing returns, you know, or the remnants. Here we are. So I'm glad that, particularly this late at night with everybody being here and enjoying the hamburgers, everybody get about 10 sliders apiece over here? Okay, so that's good appetizer to get started, I guess, for the main course, which will be 10 more sliders. So got enough of those, I think, to go around and for the rest of the evening. Well, again, I want to thank you guys who do listen to the podcast from time to time. I want to thank you particularly because today I released number 750. Wow. 750. That's right.
That's amazing.
Thank you. I am so happy and so pleased because I've had several people who have been on the podcast over the years. There are more than 750 people I've had on the podcast because whenever I'm doing convention reports from day to day, the daily reports, I talk to several people each day. But then also while I'm at a convention, a lot of times I will take some time then to actually take an hour to record an episode with somebody while I'm there. So I've already got like about 10 in the barrel right now, kind of stacked up and ready for future weeks because I've got a lot of conventions I'm going to. He mentioned I'm going to a lot of conventions, and that's true. There are a lot of them around. It's hard to catch them all, and so by listening to the podcast, you kind of feel as if that you're there because I try to give you that flavor as if that you can feel the emotion about what's going on. I mean, it's so exciting. I mean, when you come to the dealer's room and you see all the dealers like we've got here, the dealer we have here, I mean. So, which is one of the reasons you come to a convention, to kind of see what's new. Here we come to see what's old. So,
that's the best dealer table I've seen in years.
It's the best one.
It's a great dealer table.
And what I say when you come to see what's old, just look to your left and look to your right. And if they're not older than you, then guess who's old? So. But again, have a lot of people who are in the room that I have talked with, who I have talked with in the past, including Doug Conn. Doug was one of the early ones that I had. I've had this for like 12 years, and I had him on my lecture tour. I've been doing the lecture tour since 2002, and I've got like about 70 different cities around the country that I work with in hosting, talk with them, try to get lectures to come through. But the format of this evening is going to be a little bit different from what that I would normally do at a convention, or what that I would do then in my podcast. And this is going to be more of a talk show type of a thing in which we're going to be bringing up some people, a few people who are the talent and performers and lecturers at the convention here. We have a lot of talent. I think we've got about a dozen different performers. I'm not going to be able to get all of them here. Some of them I know, like Andy Gladwin. He's a junior. He's just turning 40. What's this guy doing here? So he just flew in from the UK, and so he said, look, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to get some winks. So he went to bed. So there are some others I'm just not going to be having the time to get around to with the limited time that we're going to be having tonight. And speaking of limited time, I wanted to speak with someone off as we get started who is really a legend in magic, and particularly in most endearing to you in the St. Louis community, of someone who is well known not only here in this community, but outside, as I said, legendary from the standpoint that he has done so much and worked at the Magic Castle since the opening day, and that's Harry Monti. So, Harry, thank you very much for coming. And I'd spoken earlier, and Harry's not going to be able to come and speak, but Trudy, his wife's going to come. Trudy, can you come on down? And let's give her a round of applause as she comes to be our first guest over here. Excellent. Thank you so very much. I appreciate you. We chatted briefly beforehand. I'm going to have you have a seat over here. Ladies and gentlemen, here she is, Trudy Monti. Hey, Trudy. Thank you very much. Here, have a seat, have a mic. And so we were talking briefly, and whenever that Harry has, of course, he is a past president, the national president of the Society of American Magicians. And has that changed over the years as far as the presidents? It seems like one of the things the president's known for is kind of traveling the world, and spreading the goodwill. Did you get to travel with him to some foreign destinations, or were you foreign like to Austin, Texas? I mean, how far did you go?
No, we traveled a lot. We went to Europe. We went to the first SAM convention in Austria.
Wow.
We went to Beijing, to China, a couple times. I was national secretary when he was national president.
How nice.
So whenever the China performers needed letters of introduction to come to the U.S. to perform, I was the one who usually wrote their letters and invited them. So we both worked at it.
And so after he had retired from his position, did you also, or did you stick around then?
No, I stuck around. I was national secretary for 10 years.
Oh, you were? Okay.
And then I've been on the endowment fund for 25 years.
So you're still on the endowment fund. How does the endowment fund work, and what does that money go to? It's through donations, right?
Yeah, it's donations, and the basic premise is for arts education. And we give scholarships every year to magic camps. We've given them 5 of them this year to Tannins, 1 to McBride. And then we also have the Houdini Fund, and I don't think enough people really know about that.
Which is why I think you need to preach that, sister.
Yeah.
Tell them.
The Houdini Fund has been established to help magicians, no, not just magicians, anybody in the arts, to help them if they need financial need. It doesn't pay hospital bills, but it does pay for quality of life. So if somebody has a need for a scooter or something that will enhance the quality of their life, they need to apply. They need to get a doctor's recommendation and apply to the endowment fund. And there's a very good chance, if there's a real need, that they can award that.
So it's not something for national disasters if there is a hurricane or a tornado necessarily?
They have had requests for things for national...
That could wipe it out pretty fast, I would think.
Yeah.
So really it's more specific, the kind of things you're talking about there then? For the
really
most part.
Specific things, and the medical need is what it's established for. And it's been going on. It's the Houdini Fund, and I will make another observation there. People want to donate to the Houdini Fund because of the name. The Houdini Fund has a lot of money in it, and the people don't normally. We don't get a lot of requests for grants from that, but the endowment fund, separate from the Houdini Fund, it needs the money too.
I see.
So, and we do send the kids to camp and all, and we get wonderful comments back from them. I think that's a wonderful thing that they're doing for the committee or for the community, because sending 5 young people to Tannins, it's pretty expensive.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Yeah, for like a week long, I mean, the travel and everything with that. And so, so people can apply. How do they go about applying to that? Who do they write to?
Go to the SAM Magic Endowment Fund website. There's an application there. They just fill out the application and send it in. They do have to have a financial need. Okay, and they can put that in their essay, whatever they write. Changing topics here, and I mentioned about the Magic Castle and about Harry working there for a long time. Now, the castle's been open for almost 60 years, I think. When was that it opened? Was that when was it? 1962? Yeah. And so I guess that was when Harry first... He went out there the first year. He performed there 53 years straight.
Wow.
So he holds the record for
the
longest number of consecutive performances. Yeah. And,
did you do a different act every year, too?
He did stand-up, he did parlor, he did close-up. A lot of times we used to go out for 2 weeks in a row, and he'd do close-up one week and stand-up another week. Yeah.
How fun. Now, you were telling me earlier about the fire they had.
Oh, well... When they had the fire, I think it was 2011, we were already scheduled to go out. And so we had a commitment for all of our travel arrangements. And the castle wasn't open except for one small area down in the cellar area, the basement, where the Peller Theater is. That was back in under what used to be the garage, so the fire
Right.
and the water damage didn't hurt that. So they kept that open, and they would have some buffets there, and they had one performer. They didn't cancel Harry because he was from out of town and already had the travel commitments, and so he normally did 4 shows a night. Well, since he was the only performer, he just performed and performed and performed, and he usually ended up doing 7, 8, 9 shows a night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, what a trooper.
But he was the only one there, and of course, it's the castle.
Exactly. Now, I guess with his health condition, that he's not, doesn't have any plans, I guess, in coming this year? Or
No, his last performance was in 2016, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his 53rd year. It happened to be our 45th anniversary was his very last performance. And that
on
was,
that date?
Yeah, on that date. And that was his last performance, period. He's had a lot of medical issues, and when he came back to St. Louis, he had a procedure done that wasn't effective, and it left him virtually bedridden for about 5 years since then. And so he had no more performances, but his last performance, he was at the top of his game.
Right.
That night, he not only got a standing ovation, but 2 ladies jumped up and kissed him. So
And one of them was not you, I'm taking
No, one of them was not me. And I said, go for it, guy.
Get it while you can get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. Trudy, thank you very much. I appreciate you being
Thank
a guest
you.
over here.
Thank you.
If you wish to stay with us, you can just kind of scoot over there if you want. That's okay if I can get up too. Here we go. That's why it's called the senior tour. So
Thank
there you go. Thanks again, Trudy, and thank you, Harry. I appreciate that. Next, we have some other guests I'm going to be choosing from the audience, and I wanted to talk with Doug Conn for just a minute. Doug's going to be one of the people who are going to be lecturing and performing here as well. There's a microphone then for you.
What's up,
Thanks,
Doc?
Doug. Hey, man.
Check. Hey, y'all.
So, all the way from New Orleans, and I haven't heard too much from John Rockerbomber in a while. What's John up to?
Yeah, he's been hunkered down since the thing, just in Algiers Point doing the.
I remember that he was working, his full-time job, I thought, was like with an airline company, and I assume he's retired from that some time ago.
Many moons, yeah. He
Yeah.
got a good deal on that early out, and then went right into just being the super magic publisher.
Right. And so what kinds of publications has he been doing? He's published your stuff? Or?
Yeah, most of I think what he's doing now is publishing online, like library.com. If you go on there, you can find like 60 manuscripts by Rockerbomber covering a variety of subjects. A couple days ago, I'm researching Red Hot Mama. What do I see there? Rockerbomber's got the bibliography with 17 methods and all the
Right.
history. So, if you want to look up his stuff, that's probably the best place to get it. I don't know that he's super active publishing now, but yeah.
For a while there, he was going to all the conventions, it seems like, and I would catch him different
He'll be
places.
at SAM in July.
Well,
and
Junior,
New Orleans.
it's going to be at the Big Easy there, so
right, yeah.
come on down to
Come
Louisiana.
on to New Orleans, y'all. Always
Now,
a good time in New
I
Orleans.
saw a picture that he had posted with just recently at the anniversary of Harry Anderson's passing, which was just, 4 years ago? Or just recently? I mean, in recent history.
Passing anniversaries.
Yeah,
just
4 or
a few-
5 years
yeah,
ago, I
yeah.
think. So it's been recent. And
Oh, yeah,
so
it was at the dry dock.
it was you were the one who had posted, said, what
Yeah.
was the restaurant?
Someone said, "What are you eating, John?" And I said, "I could answer that." That'd be gumbo, side of sausage. John had a po' boy. Meals I've had many times in that joint. That place has been home to some serious sessions.
Is that in the quarter or whereabouts?
It's in Algiers Point. So if you're in the French Quarter and you jump on the ferry
Right.
across the river, which
Right.
I recommend to everyone, I say, you want a good time? Take the ferry across the river. Go get a po' boy at the Dry Dock Cafe, which is
Yeah, get away from Bourbon Street, go across
yeah,
the...
do a little, and that's a great neighborhood. I raised my family there. My baby's mom, I used to work there. My daughter even did at one point. One of the guys said, "Did your daughter work there?" I said, "Yeah, she served many famous cardmen."
Well, speaking of cardmen, and going back to Harry Anderson for just a minute, then also that he lived there for a while and had the Spade and Arrow magic shop.
Spade and Archer.
Spade and Archer, sorry.
Yep.
So do you have any stories about Harry? I mean,
Well, right before he opened that shop, I had a shop in the French Quarter, and I'm working the counter one day. I'm like, yeah, I'm in my magic shop, and then I see this in the counter. I see it in the window. I'm like, that's Harry Anderson looking in my window. He came in to tell me he's opening a shop down the street. Eventually, my shop wouldn't be there after that. Go figure.
Is that because of the hurricane?
No, actually, that was
Katrina?
me losing my mind. I just
Oh.
walked out of that shop due to a bad business arrangement sometimes,
So you just walked out,
Well,
basically.
kind of. When you
Okay.
have business partners and they don't do their job well, sometimes things. And also, do we want to talk about the turbulent life of a magic shop owner? Nah, let's go on and talk about something else. Yeah.
Well, there are not many brick and mortar magic shops around anymore.
There's not. No, there's not.
You can almost count them. It seems like, across the United States that are
I have
still...
hopes Vanishing Ink is going to open 1,000 across. Andy Gladwin, we need magic shops across the globe.
Well, we did have that, wasn't that Magic Masters that was high-end?
I did time there for off
Did
and
time.
on. No, it's like that. I mean, after the first 6 months, it's not fun anymore. It's
Yeah.
just you're in the mall.
Because you're teaching basically the same thing, kind of the helicopter card and
The goal
Rocky
was
the
to sell
Raccoon.
Rocky
and
Raccoons.
Rocky, yeah.
That was the pitch.
Right.
You gathered a crowd with magic tricks. Sure, you sold magic, but the goal was to sell that raccoon.
Which is where David Williamson, I guess, got started.
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
routine you see him do is 90% the routine we use to sell the raccoon in that shop.
Did he develop that routine, or was that something that...
So that came from a comic named Jeff Justice.
Jeff Justice, of course, that's what it was.
He
Yeah,
had
yeah.
the restaurant story. It all evolved from that, Whacking the Raccoon.
Yep.
I'm sure a lot of that's Williamson, because his comedy runs deep in the Magic Master's script. I'm sure a lot of that Rocky is his. You
Yeah.
know, and what a.
Well, we talk about some other people. I'm going to talk about you then as well before we move on with somebody else. But I wanted to talk with you a little bit about social media because I know during the lockdown that you have become Mr. YouTube and you're teaching a lot of magic and.
So during COVID, I became Mr. Short Form Video Guy, is what I became.
Okay.
Posting 1-minute videos, vertical videos, TikToks, and YouTube, Instagram Reels. During that course, I transitioned to YouTube long form, and that's got my attention now where I am doing a myriad of things. I do lives where I perform magic. I have guests.
And that was all out of necessity because you were really a street magician for the longest time.
Yeah. I mean, when everyone was out of work for all the entertainers, but certainly the buskers. And you know what I did right away was I took all the buskers who rely on the street, to make a living when it was shut down. I said, let's try something online and see if we can generate some interest. And if nothing else, it'll give us something to do for a couple weeks, while we're waiting out this 3-week lockdown.
Exactly. Yes.
So we did a show online, and I got interested in the platforms, and my daughter said, hey, you should try TikTok. And, 3 years later, I'm still in the game.
And you have been able to successfully monetize that.
It's my job now, for the most part. I still do gigs. I still street perform, but I could pay the bills with all the...
So you kind of do your performing almost as a hobby because this is you really are earning your bread from
the street performing in particular has become more of a part of the social media job than collecting money on the street. Like if I go out to the street perform, I'm more interested in getting a 1 or 2 minute moment to share with my online audience, which would generate a lot more income than the money I would make from passing the hat that day and getting money. So when I go street perform now, it's a different goal. I don't know if that statement's in the ballpark.
A lot of street performers kind of move from place to place. They'll go to Key West or they go out to California. Or they through necessity. But you have always, as I recall, just pretty much stayed in the Big Easy there.
Correct. So
why did you find that? Because your family's there, I guess. But
I'm raising children there. I raised 3 girls there, and I would do occasional jaunts traveling around. But I would complement my busking with professional work. Contracts, I did like Nabisco, Unlock the Magic, and
that goes back.
I did a lot of those things. So I do Magic Masters for a while, and I guess what do they call me, a journeyman? Is that what it makes me?
That is what makes a journeyman. Speaking of,
means I don't do anything really well. But I do a lot of stuff.
Jack of all trades. So I wanted to mention briefly before we move on here, it was about Gazzo, because I understand that he recently had a stroke. I don't know how many of you know that or not, or also know about the GoFundMe account that they're trying to raise some money to help him. You want to talk about that just briefly, or about your relationship or knowing Gazzo?
Gazzo had a stroke. Let me tell you about Gazzo, who I don't really know that well, and he didn't know me that well. But after Hurricane Katrina, where the city got wiped out, very first magician that calls me to see how I'm doing is Gazzo, and I had never talked to that man in my life.
How nice.
He knew I was a busker and knew I was
concerned.
And concerned.
How
and
nice.
This speaks volumes about this man, and what else do you need to know about Gazzo than that, Besides this. And I don't know how you guys know or feel about street performers, but this man has put more smiles on more faces probably than any magician alive. He's out there doing shows in the wild for 100, 200, 300 people, 400, 500 a day, 300 days a year, 30 years in a lifetime. Imagine how many faces have seen Gazzo and laughed.
More than television.
You know, David Copperfield, Matt King, they might give him a run for his money on shows done and smiles made, but he's certainly in the top 3 in my opinion, and wow, what a legend. So if you can help him, Gazzo GoFundMe, you can find it there, and he could use the help.
He sure can. He had a stroke a few years back and recovered from that one, but this is a lot more serious, and it was his right side, and I can understand that he's pretty much paralyzed on one side. And how old would he be now? He's in his 60s, I'm sure.
Right, yeah.
So
in the 60s.
He could use your assistance again, so just check for Gazzo with GoFundMe. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, Scott.
Thank you. If you want to just scoot over for a minute, because
like that.
Yep, so that way that you can kind of share the bench or the chair, if you will. Boy, it's hard to get in and out of that. With somebody else that I had talked with a little bit earlier. Is Bill Goodwin in here by chance? Bill must have skipped out. No, he's over here. Where's Bill? Oh, there you are. Come on, man. From the Magic Castle, here he is, the Magician of the Year, close-up Magician of the Year, Bill Goodwin. There you go, Bill. So glad that you're here. And I understand this is not your first senior tour. You were here last year then, too, right?
Yes, I've done 100% of the senior tours.
You've been at every one of these. And why'd you come back again this year? Did you just have a lot of fun last year? Or?
Money.
Yeah, big money. Oh, I noticed that you're sporting something different this year. You got a little hirsute here.
Oh, yes. I thought I'd shake it up a little bit. I don't know if it...
Go incognito.
Yeah, a little bit.
So I wanted to ask a little bit about the Magic Castle and the library. You've been a librarian. What's the other lady's name that works with you?
Oh, she moved away.
Oh, so she did?
We have another librarian named Joe Fox, who's stupendous. He's really great.
Mm-hmm.
He knows a lot of stuff I don't know. He knows about prop magic. And
I know Joe. Is he the guy that wears the derby?
No,
big
he's
guy?
a tall guy.
Oh.
He's a Houdini guy. He's an escape artist.
Okay, but I still want your job, Bill. No, I'm serious. It's not funny. I want you.
No, I got a pretty sweet gig, I think.
Good at it.
What makes that job so great?
Well, for me, I love reading books. And that's how I grew up learning magic.
You sound like Dick Hatch.
Yeah, so it's like I've told this to a lot of people, but every time I clock out every day, I know it's better. I like that part of it, and they pay me for making it better. So it's twofold, really.
Yeah.
That's a great thing.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great resource. And if you perform at the Magic Castle, even though you're not a member, you do get library access for the whole week. Mm-hmm. So do the late shows, because if you do the early shows, I close before you're off.
Well, when you and I were working close up together, were you working the library and then coming and doing the show later?
I'm sure I was.
Really doing double duty.
Yeah.
And as we were talking earlier, that year when we were working, you ended up being the close-up Magician of the Year. And the next year I was working with Armando Lucero, and he won Magician of the Year. So if you want to be the Magician of the Year, make sure you end up working
Scott's
with me.
the man.
That's right. Because I compared the two, it's like that guy, not Scott. So, now, about the library, can you check books out then also, or you have to stay?
No, it's all in-house stuff.
All in-house. You can't leave with anything. Do you have much, if any, thievery from time to time, or do you keep track of all the books?
It's tough to know. I know back in the day they used to, when they had nobody actually manning the thing. But the way the library works, if somebody stole a book and I noticed a book missing, it could have been stolen 5 years earlier. I wouldn't know. There's too much in there.
Sure.
I really have no clue. And if we had cameras everywhere, who's going to look at 5 years' worth of footage to find out who the guy was?
Right. And the books that you have,
I hope that doesn't mean you're going to think, oh, I can go in and steal a book.
You're not given free rein here. So whenever that you are given books, do you have a place for it, or is it kind of one has to come out? Or, I mean, you have a finite storage space.
Well, it's really creeping up on us right now. We're running out of some space, so I'm not sure how to handle it because people keep giving us stuff.
Well, that's the
I
thing.
don't want to get rid of anything.
Hire more help. You need more help and more space.
Well, you can donate an extra building, and then I'll let you run that.
Yeah, you got Randy Pitchford money.
come on.
Yeah. That's right. Just have another library addendum.
Yeah, more books
edition.
come out all the time. You know, you would think books might be a dead thing, but it's not. Vanishing Ink produces books all the time, and they're great, and they're very kind to the library. If they publish books themselves, they always donate them, and it's just constant donations from Vanishing Ink.
Well, I would think there'd be constant donations also, Bill, from the standpoint you have a lot of people who are dying magicians and their widows, usually women, don't know what to do with it.
Grab everything and then decide which we want to keep and what we want to sell, but
Right.
it takes so much time. Now I say, please give me a list. Let me see what we need. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine, but I have to, be a little picky now.
And so, do you have a list of things that you are looking for that you'd like to have, or you kind of look at it and say, "Well, I think I'd like to keep this one. This is Benson by Starlight. We don't have that, or whatever."
There were certain books. There was one book, the Ramsey Finale. I've wanted it for a long time. The library never had it. I finally got it like 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay.
And it cost me $200. It was on eBay. It was totally worth it. It turned out to be Paul Daniels' copy.
Wow.
So it's got his book plate in there. And a letter from Andrew Galloway to Paul Daniels with an inscription as well. So it was worth every penny. And it wasn't my money, so it was all good.
So they actually gave you some money to buy.
Yeah,
It's
I got
not
a
all
little budget
donations.
to add to the collection, yeah.
Yeah. I have a book in my collection from Tony Andruzzi that was after the fire. Remember that it actually, some of the pages are charred. It smells like smoke.
Really?
Yeah. It's got his name inscribed in there, too.
Wow.
It was kind of cool. But I think that's something, too, as far as you're talking about maybe book plates. Do you think that's an important thing, that when you are buying a collection that it might be worth more because it came from Vernon or Paul Daniels? I mean, does that have some...
I really don't know. I would think so. If you have a Houdini signature in a book, that's going to be a lot more.
Yeah, well, of course. Yeah, that's going to be kind of rare, and I think people would know about that. But I
Yes.
think, some others, I'm just saying, I had some book plates made a long time ago, so every book that I know of is in my library has a book plate. If it doesn't have a book plate, and then also I put this in my, in a database, so I know how much I paid for it, what who the author was, and whether it was a first printing, a first edition, or whatever like that. Do you keep any kind of a database like that?
Well, we
too?
do have a database, and it's actually available to the public. So you can go to magichouse.com/library, and you can see our holdings, and it talks about what edition it is, how many pages.
That's great.
If it's
So they can
signed or
come and
not.
read that and look at it then.
Yeah, online. Anybody can go there and check it out.
Yeah, I think it's important. I had gotten that tip actually from a little book that Jay Marshall had written, and about the importance of making a database. And so, if even at our age, most of us have pretty good-sized libraries, and it's never too late to start a little bit at a time. Taking 2 or 3 books off the shelf and kind of putting in that, and then again you stamp it, put a book plate or whatever you want, so you know that those have been categorized and cataloged, and then you can kind of move on in a little bit at a time over a period. Then you'll have them all done.
Yeah, once you do it once, you know you got it solved. You
Yes.
don't have to think about it again, and it's going to be something you're going to go back to, and you're going to be glad you did it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Bill, thanks very much. I appreciate you being a
no
guest
problem.
over here.
Thanks.
So, Bill Goodwin, thank you. So I just scoot over there closer to Doug. There we go. And as we kind of go on also, I was talking to Randy Wakeman a little bit earlier. Is Randy still around here? Randy bugged out? Okay, I guess so. I'm going to be calling on Alan Ackerman over here to come over and join us then. Hey, Alan, come on over. Hey, man. You're over there shuffling cards. I know what you're doing. You're not paying attention. Surprise. Man, you look like an actor. I mean, you look like you're healthy and in good shape, and you look like that you just came off the set of a movie. So you doing good, feeling good? You having a good time?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Good. And so, well, Vegas has been good for you, and
I've been there, I got there in 71, so 52 years now.
52 years. Wow. And did you work for a while, like as a resident, kind of like, with Mike Skinner and some of the other guys who had different places they were working?
No, I don't. So I actually always thought, well, I was in the service. That's how I got
that's
to
right.
Vegas. I was
Yeah.
in Ellis. And then I thought I was going to go into gaming security. I really did. And so as soon as I got out of the service, that was 73, I went and took advantage of the GI Bill and got my degree. And
What was your degree in?
Mathematics,
In okay.
probability theory, but I really emphasized in computer science. But the
And Percy
computer department was part of the math department back then. We didn't have a computer department.
And Percy Diaconis, I guess, was teaching that class back then.
No, he was in Stanford or someplace.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was just at UNLV, and then we got an MSI computer in there, and I thought shuffle simulator. So and I had this gaming software computer business.
Mm-hmm.
That was my main profession. And then I taught computer science and math at the universities, and the magic's just been what caused me to have these other careers. So,
and you were doing that kind of on the side during this whole time, I assume, then as well.
Oh, yeah, never stopped the boards. Never.
Yeah. And so after you retired from that, then you started spending more time with the cards, I guess, with the baseball.
Yeah, obviously I got more time than I used
to
now.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how many books have you got? 2?
No, I got four books.
Okay.
And then I've got lots of sets of lecture notes.
You bring any with you?
Yeah, so I got a new set of notes called Senior Moments 2023. And
perfect for us.
Yeah.
So every chapter is the same.
Yeah. So, and then I had something like 23 DVDs or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, those 4 books that you wrote, were those prior to your retirement or?
Oh, no, they were a long time ago. My first book was 69.
Yeah, okay.
1969. That was right before I went in the service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, before I went in the service.
And you've seen an evolution of magic in Las Vegas that went from nothing to where we are now. I mean, for a while, I understand that they couldn't book magicians in Las Vegas. They were not accepted. They didn't want them. It was, the Rat Pack back then. And
when I got there, Siegfried was at Stardust.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was doing great. He was getting standing ovations every night.
I guess that'd be about right. Now think about that. 50 years ago, so it was further back. So you weren't there during the mob days.
No, I got there, like I said, in 71.
Yeah. So okay, I'm sorry. Boy, time flies. For some reason, I keep thinking 50s would be back in the 50s, but no. Here we are in 2023. So, senior moment. So, with that, you have still seen, it's of course Siegfried and Roy brought magic, and then you can kind of see how, I guess, more close-up guys, had come about.
Sure. Yeah, so Skinner moved, I think, in 75 to Vegas. Lily Langtry's at Golden Nugget.
Yeah.
And spent about 22 years there.
I was thinking of some of the other guys also who were working at the casinos, and my mind has gone completely blank.
Johnny Paul was
Johnny
there.
Paul. That was one name I was trying to think of. And Buddy, or not Buddy.
And then we had Jimmy Grippo.
Jimmy Grippo, thank you.
And we Daniel Cross.
So Daniel Cross is still around.
Yes, he is.
I was trying to get with him to do a podcast episode, and we just couldn't get in contact with him. A buddy of mine, David McGee, was just saying, hey, he knows Daniel, and never could. He was trying to contact him. So he's around. You see him still from time to time?
Well, it's been probably 3 years.
So it's like prior to COVID. This is the last time you saw him, maybe? Like that was 20, I guess, when it started. So
yeah, maybe 2019, somewhere around there. Yeah.
And so he stopped working. I remember he was on the cover of the Lincoln Ring magazine with a little seahorse that he had done, and he did that, I guess, as part of his act. Also, is that right?
Yeah, he did. I saw him do it many times.
And it must have been a killer.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. What would you say would be a signature trick of yours that you like to do?
It's what I'm working on at the time.
Love it. That's the right answer. That's whatever you're working on at the time. And so you got some new stuff you're going to be showing here at the convention.
Yeah.
Then as well.
Right.
Yep. And so what are your long-term goals? What else are you planning on doing or going? You're going to stay in Vegas, I guess.
I wrote a book for Andy and Josh, and it's called All In.
We're excited.
A new book?
It's 2 volumes.
You going to give one to the Magic Castle there?
And so, so hopefully that'll come up. I'll be talking to Andy about that tomorrow. He's got the photos now. He's got to put them in, got to get it laid out. Yeah.
Right.
But the book's written. Mm-hmm. So that's that project, and then I think I might reprint the old ones, maybe do an early Ackerman.
Right.
With Esoterrus, the Mafia book, and Here's My Card. Put those out.
Briefly, before I bring on another guest over here, I was wanting to know if you had worked very closely or again, my mind just kind of went blank. The 2 guys you were talking about security, like at casinos, and the fellows who had written the book.
Steve Forty.
Steve Forty and his buddy.
And Jason England.
Not Jason England.
George Joseph.
No, sorry. The other guy I'm trying to think, when it was at Magic Live, I remember that Bill Malone was who? Ron Conley, thank you. That's the name I was trying to think of. And yeah, do you chat with those guys from time to time, or?
Steve, every now and then.
Uh-huh.
Ron, I've only had maybe
Passing
one or two sessions with
Okay,
over the
okay.
years.
I just didn't know if they had encouraged you or maybe tried to help you get into that, or if you thought about getting back into the security firm.
No.
Okay.
So what happened was when I got my little computer company, I just kind of that was off in my own little world.
That's me. Yeah, that's your new jam. That's what you're going to do. Okay, that sounds great. Alan, thank you very much. I appreciate you being a guest. Alan Ackerman. Let's move on down there if you would there a second. All right. One last guest. I think we got room for one more person over here then too. I believe that Mike Powers is still here, isn't he? Come on, Mike. Come on down here. Here, take the mic right there, Mike. Here we go.
Thank you. Just sit next to my pal Alan.
There we go. A lot of card guys here that we've got, certainly. So glad that you could join us. And speaking of cards, I know you retired a long time ago from school. You were teaching science?
Physics and math and stuff.
And physics and math, that's right. Which is how that you got into the Tesseract.
The Tesseract, yes, indeed.
Which is the title of your book. And I know that we were just talking earlier, as we started talking about it, people would zone out quickly. But
Are we going to talk about it?
I don't want... If they want to go to sleep, it is very interesting to me. If you can go back and listen to the podcast, so it goes into more detail as to what that is. But it's basically something that is...
I can... yeah, it's that.
Explain that.
It's that. It's
like
basically a four-dimensional hypercube.
There you go, four-dimensional.
That's basically it.
Thank you.
And the cool thing is we can't visualize it because it's beyond 3 dimensions that we live in. If you could go X, Y, 2 perpendicular, right? The plane, X and Y, and then Z, the third dimension.
Right.
If you could go perpendicular to all 3 of those dimensions at once,
right,
which we can't do, you would step out of our universe, basically. Sounds pretty far out because where would you be if you're not in our universe? Well, you wouldn't be in this universe if you could do that. Anyway, the Tesseract exists there, but you can cast a shadow of it.
In the multiverse.
Well, no, the multiverse is different, though. We can go down that road if you want to. We can go down that road if you like.
Well,
how much time do we have? Anyway, the shadow of a Tesseract is 3-dimensional, and you can actually, it's on the cover of my book. Just buy the book, you can see what a Tesseract looks like, yes.
And so there is a trick you call it Tesseract in there, or why the title for the magic?
That's really a question that I've asked myself. When I was writing the book, I thought, what am I going to call this book? And I just always loved the 4-dimensional. It's just such a far-out idea, the fourth dimension. Yeah. And I just thought, can I hook this into magic? And I thought, well, it's, magic is kind of in the 4th dimension. It's where the spectators can't see what we're doing, right? Because it's out of their view, even though it's right in front of them, right?
Okay.
So it's sort of like being in the 4th dimension where we can't really see what's going on there because it's outside of our universe. Mm-hmm. I tried to hook it in, and I just love the name Tesseract, and that's basically it.
I like that. Okay, that kind of makes some sense. And I don't think we lost anybody out there then, by the way.
They haven't gone to sleep yet. I'm watching them.
And it's hard talking with you without talking with Maria also. Is Maria here, by the way, then, too, or is she already?
I think she
might have gone to bed. I think the Tesseract conversation probably sent her out.
She's heard enough about Tesseract.
Okay, well, but you guys had met. She is a magician in her own right, and you had met her at the Abbott's get-together. Is that right?
Yes, we did, yeah.
So tell me about how that, I thought that was kind of an interesting story.
It's cool. I'll try to keep it short, but I was talking to some friends of hers from the Champaign-Urbana area, and I can still picture this. We were on the main drag of Cole, and you've been there. And I look over, and there's this really foxy chick walking towards us with this black leather miniskirt on, and I'm just like, wow, who is that? And she walks up and goes, and they say, this is Maria. She's a magician, and it was like, wow. And we met again at the Legion and talked about, things. We just had all this overlapping interests and everything. And next thing you knew, we were married. And she's a Chavez graduate. She's very serious about magic in her own right. She's a Fechter's attendee. She's got her PhD, performed 3 times, did really well. So, it's one of those things. It's nice to have a wife who's a magician because you don't have to do the dishes just to show somebody a card trick,
That's true. Now, you get around to a few conventions from time to time, and what is one of your favorite conventions you like to attend?
Well, the senior tour. The senior tour comes to mind as a... well, some of the memorable ones, I was seeing Alan up here, and he is one of my heroes in magic. I think he knows that. I met him in 1980. I was 33 years old. It was the Desert Magic Seminar at the Aladdin. Do you remember this, Alan? And I think we were sitting with John Cornelius and Roger Klaus, and Alan was there.
I remember that. Didn't Vernon lecture that one also? And Slidini was there, and Christian?
Absolutely.
Ricky Jay, and
I don't remember Ricky Jay, but Vernon and Slidini were there, and it was supposed to be Fred Capps.
Yes.
As the guest.
But
and
he had cancer.
He had cancer, and Philippe Fiallo came and did some really cool stuff and showed some video of Fred Capps. But I have Alan's book. Here's my card. Did you just say it's going to be reprinted, Al?
Well, that's going to be my next project.
Next project. It's a freaking fantastic book. I hope nobody else gets it because there's some fantastic stuff in there. It's a little thin book. I've got it autographed by Alan, 1980. That was my first magic convention, so that's one of my favorites just because I met so many people. I saw Johnny Paul, Jimmy Grippo there, a young Mike Amar, young Daryl. It was just a freaking fantastic convention, and my first one. So it just got me so fired up. What's that?
Hard to beat.
Yes, so that's...
Until you got here.
Until we got here. The senior tour is dominating my, at this point. But, Abbott's is one that you go to. A real down-home convention. Hard to describe, isn't it, when you try to... What's Abbott's like,
It's like a summer camp for adult magicians.
That's right. It's a very, very different experience, but so much fun, and we have that. Magi Fest is one that I've gone to for years and years and years. St. Louis Jubilee, which this may be a spin-off of that, I think, because Steve Zelke, I think he was a part of putting that together back in the day, if I remember right. That was a really great convention. Those are the ones that come to mind. Of course, Fechter's. You can't beat Fechter's.
I was about to say that.
See you in a week there, huh?
Yep, we'll all be there, and it's going to be our 50th coming up. And so the sad part is that Obie didn't quite make that. Obie Bryan didn't make it his 50th.
It's too bad, for sure.
But you have been an integral part of that then as well. I think I'm coming up on my 40th attendance here this year.
You got me beat, man.
But you also conduct like the Pat Page learn a trick or teach a trick kind of a thing.
I do. Yeah, I've been doing that for years. When Pat Page died some years back, I inherited the responsibility, some big shoes to fill, because Pat was fantastic in that role. It's kind of a themed teach a trick, which I like.
So each year?
Yeah, each year the group picks out a topic from a list, like, magic from 50 years ago, Martin Gardner tricks, tricks with sticky stuff.
Or
I
business
forgot
cards,
where I was.
Business cards.
Business
whatever,
cards. And so everybody who's on teaching a trick, that's the theme, which has been really been effective. It's been a good session. So this year we're doing Who Was Eddie Fechter? We're kind of deviating from the normal teach a trick thing.
But going back to its roots when Eddie used to have
I think partly it was because a lot of the guys are younger and don't really know Eddie Fechter. They're going to Fechter's without really knowing much about Eddie Fechter. So we've got a little panel of people who know.
Alan, you've attended 4F. No, I never did. You haven't been there.
You
Bill,
how
about
should,
you?
Man.
Doug, I know. Yes. Okay.
Okay, it's on me. I'm going to sponsor all three of you guys next year.
I'll be the second one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you got two sponsors here. It's kind of, if maybe they didn't really think about going, but these guys absolutely should be there. It'd be so much fun.
They influence a lot of the people who are there, certainly.
Oh, absolutely. These guys are great folks in magic and legendary in many ways.
Back in the old days when we did meet at the Forks Hotel, I think that was fun, where we actually had a fish fry, and that goes back, on Friday nights at there. Remember that?
Yeah. Well, this year you haven't seen this video. I'm bringing my panel of people was supposed to be like 5 or 6 people, and some of them can't make it, or for different reasons. I won't go into all the details. But I'm having to rely on some videos. Well, I shot some video in 1991 of arriving at the Forks, seeing the sign, magicians, Forks Hotel, going in the door, being in the bar area back in those days, and it's just pandemonium in there. It's nothing like it is now, and it's really going to be fun, and I think you'll have fun with this because nobody has ever seen this video. I'm bringing it this year.
I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, so it'll be fun.
Yeah, with so many old faces that will bring back such memories, with that then as well. I think that's the great thing about these conventions. We get an opportunity to see each other once a year, and a lot of times at these conventions, there are only people who attend that convention from that region or whatever. So they don't go to the IBM or the SAM, or if they go to that, that's the only one they go to, or whatever it is. Some people have only gone to the 4F convention,
Right. But it's all over the world, right? I mean, there's how many nationalities are there? You can see, and Glenn puts out the PDF file, and it shows all the countries that are represented and who's on the show. It's really cool because you can see. I mean, it's something
Jimmy,
like 20 countries.
Yeah, Jim Molinari has been there.
Jimmy's been there many times. Yeah. Yep, for sure.
Because I was going to say, do you help with the sound also sometimes too, or? No. Okay.
No, Jimmy doesn't know anything about sound.
Okay. I know Jimmy C is the guy who handles that, but I was thinking that he's got a crew of different guys who have kind of helped. But you haven't been back pulling curtains or anything, so you've just kind of been one of the attendees.
I met this guy.
But the guy from Michigan used to do some of the sound.
Tony Gerard.
Tony Gerard.
Yeah, Tony Gerard.
Yes, right.
Yep.
Right.
I knew Jimmy in 1980. I've got his lecture notes. We were just talking about that today, right?
That's right.
Jimmy Molinari, 1980.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now you're going to be also lecturing and performing here then, aren't you, as well?
I'll be performing Saturday, I think.
Yeah.
That's why I think you need to come up over here and have a seat then also.
Yeah.
So, Mike, thank you very much. If you want to hand the mic over to Jimmy and just have a seat over here, then, Jimmy.
I was going to let them lay down on the couch.
Thank you, Jim Molinari. This is going to be, you say, performing on the Saturday night show.
I believe so.
Okay. And I also want to mention, by the way, for those of you who are here, we do have another microphone over there. If there are some questions, I don't want to feel like this is one-sided of just me. If there's something that you want to ask somebody, please feel free to kind of go over there and to, because this is being recorded, to go out for the podcast, so probably going out late tomorrow night or Saturday. But on Saturday, so you're going to be doing some stand-up, close-up, or what are you playing?
Close-up.
A little bit of close-up then as well? Okay. Now, you live in St. Louis.
I live across the river in Waterloo, Illinois.
Okay, well, gosh, that's south of here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Is that kind of near where Metropolis is?
The city right to the north is Columbia.
Okay.
And then Waterloo's further down Route 3.
Okay, gotcha. Because I was thinking there was another, because Metropolis is where Superman is, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay, that's in Illinois over there. And they've got a statue to him and everything. I mean, it's kind of interesting. There's another place over there, I think it's got a statue of Popeye, right?
Yeah.
And where is that? Where's that?
Chester, Illinois.
Chester, Illinois. Is that near you?
45 minutes.
Well, there you go. And why is Popeye honored there? I mean, they sell a lot of spinach or something?
I have no idea.
What is it?
We do have the expert here,
Who is that?
Mike McClure. Yeah.
And Mike's here? Mike, why don't you come and speak over here in the microphone? I'm kind of curious to know why we are honoring Popeye over in Chester, Illinois. I think that's kind of, don't mean to get off topic here, Jimmy, but I just think that's kind of interesting. I understand why it has Superman honored in Metropolis for obvious reasons. But Mike McClure, tell us.
how much time do we have?
Oh, goodness. Is that mic on over there, Jess? There's a button over there, or you can use this mic. There we go. Yes, it is now. Okay, you're live now. It's not Memorex.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll be appearing here all night.
Yeah.
Popeye, the creator of Popeye, L.Z. Segar, was born and raised in our town. And the characters from the Popeye strip that you're familiar with, Popeye, Olive, Wimpy, those are all real people that lived in town. They were inspired by real people. The early strip, the first 20 years or so, it was all populated. The stories were taken from a small town occurrence. It's called Thimble Theater. That's what Segar created. So we're definitely the hometown of Popeye. Metropolis,
But there was a Brutus and everybody, I guess, all the characters?
Combination of all the villains together. Bluto, the big bad boy.
Bluto, sorry, yeah.
But Rocky Fiegel was the real Popeye. He was the real deal. He could take on several at a time, and they would limp off to get medical assistance, and he'd go back to the bar.
Was he in the Navy or something? Is that why?
No. Wikipedia had a picture up for quite a few years. It was a lead stoker for His Majesty's steamship, and everybody thought that was the original Rocky Fiegel. Batman was serving after Elsie Seeger was already dead. So we finally got that changed. It took a lot, but. The Popeye statues. Back in 1977, we put up a bronze statue of Popeye.
Yeah.
And he was right on the river, right on the bridge, kind of a romantic spot. People, on the river. He's protecting the town, and it was good for our tourism. And then it kind of faded away. And then in 2006, we started putting up granite statues. So every year since then, we put up a statue to 1, 2, 3, or 4 characters each year. So it's put us on the map. We've had 96 countries come because of it.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And
it's a destination
It
location.
is. And before Elsie died, he put Hocus Pocus into a strip.
And that was a...
One-off. The magician.
A magician that was in the strip.
In the strip. It was just a one-off.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, thanks very much. Now we got a little bit of trivia.
Oh,
thanks.
thank
How about
you.
that? Now we know about Popeye Chester. So, Jim, back over there to you and magic. So, you have a book out also? Didn't you have a?
I've had lecture notes out.
Lecture notes.
No, I haven't done a book.
Okay. Have you toured a lot with your lecture around here? Or have you been overseas?
I used to. I did some lectures on the East Coast years back, about 2005. I did some of the Jubilees for Stephen.
Yeah.
I did an IBM once in San Diego, I believe.
Yeah.
And that's about it. I haven't lectured lately, though.
But the reason I was asking if you were from St. Louis, but Waterloo's close enough, you probably went to DeVoe's Den, I guess, which was the magic shop.
I'm originally
here.
from Chicago.
Oh, from Chicago.
I didn't
okay.
come down here till 95.
Okay, because DeVoe's Den, as I recall, I think that was where I first got my magic kit when I was a kid, a little Sneaky Pete magic kit that my folks had bought for me from DeVoe. So in Chicago, there's a land of magic certainly up there with all the magic shops and everybody. So you grew up with Jay Marshall and all those guys.
Yeah. In 75, I walked into Mr. C's Magic Lounge in Berwyn, a west suburb of Chicago.
Yeah.
And that's where I started. That's where I started working. Before that, it was just friends and family. But I walked into there, and he had a friend behind the bar, Denny, who he would send out to the tables to perform. Mm-hmm. And he came out to my table. I was there with a girl, and he performed Hammond's Final Ace with the Gaff Aces. So we were talking, and he looked at me, and he said, by the way you talk, you sound like you know a little. You're a magician. I said, well, I do a little cards. He said, do something for me. So I did an assembly like Hammond's Final Ace, but no gaffs. And he picked up his cards and his pad, and he went back behind the bar, and he says, don't you ever send me out to the table again. That's how I started. As a matter of fact, when I started, the first weekend, I was working Tuesday through Friday when he first hired me, I walked in Friday and I met, I think, an 18-year-old Randy Wakeman was there. So Randy and I would become friends. We were both doing similar stuff. And he was the one that got the idea, because he asked me, with all your interest in cards, he says, why haven't you ever met Ed Marlowe? Mm-hmm. I said, I don't know. I mean, I obviously knew he was from Chicago. He used to stamp his name and address in the early books.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know. So Randy said, why don't we go up some Saturday? And we did. We went up a Saturday in December of 75. We got there early, had lunch, and about 12 o'clock, in walks Ed, walks over to the other side of the restaurant, sits down. And we got lucky because when I joined the round table, it was Steve Drawn, Dave Solomon, Simon Aronson. Okay. Those were the main characters. They were all out of town. Nobody was there except Ed. So we had lunch, and after lunch, we took out our cards, and I went, and Ed got up, walked over, and introduced himself to us.
Like a moth to a flame.
Yeah. So we talked for a bit, and he sat down, and I wasn't smart back then. I mean, I'm still shuffling, but I noticed I was there with Randy, Mr. C, and one other magician, and all the cards were gone. They were off the table, except mine. And they said, why don't you show something to Ed? And I said, yeah, right. So I did a cheating at blackjack thing that I used to do. Uh-huh. And I did that for him. And he was very nice. He said, I obviously know what you're doing. He says, but I cannot see what you're doing. You've blended it into your actions really well. So that made me feel really good. Yeah.
Sure.
And that was it. Every Saturday after that for 5 years.
You were part of the group.
Yeah. Broke in, got to know Steve and Dave and Simon, obviously, then. So it was great times. And when I met Ed, I had already been doing magic since I was a young teen. Mm-hmm. And when I went to the round table and saw what they were doing there, I was stunned. Wow. It was the life lesson of knowing card tricks and card magic. Uh-huh. Big difference. Big difference.
There is. And we hear so many stories, like Howard was talking about Charlie Miller and talking then about, of course, Di Vernon and others. We don't hear a lot of stories about Ed Marlowe as much. I'm sure you got a few things you can tell.
Yeah, I got a few. I told somebody else tonight, one of my favorite stories I heard from Dave Solomon. And it was Johnny Thompson and Ed having lunch. And I know anybody who's done cards, if you've been through Scarney on Cards or the Encyclopedia of Card Tricks, there's an old trick called the piano card trick.
Oh, yeah.
Simple trick, right?
Yeah, right?
So Johnny's eating, and Ed's doing the piano card trick for him.
Okay.
And he goes through it the first time, and he goes, blah, blah, blah. So he says, let me show you again. And Ed goes through it again. And he gets down to that out card. I'll put it here.
Right.
And he says, now that's even. Here's the odd. Here's the odd card. And he said, do you remember what the odd card was? And Johnny Thompson looked at me. He says, if you're telling me that that's the ace of spades, oh, shit. And Ed went, shitter's over there. That was one of the best ones I ever heard. And there was always legendary stories of Ed going out with Dave and them, going to dinner at Julian's, and it was big in Chicago. And they'd pull up, the valet would take the card, and Ed and Solomon and them are looking around. Ed's still in the backseat of the car working on cards. The valet is parking the car. They have to go get Ed. Yeah, some great stuff. And he was a very generous man. He would sit there. You wanted to learn something, he'd sit there all day with you, show you. Mm-hmm. And I remember one time I had seen center deals from people, and I asked Ed at the round table, would you show me a center deal? And he says, let's have dinner on a Sunday when it's just the two of us. I said, okay.
He kind of wanted to keep that a little secret.
Yeah. So I picked him up one Sunday. We went back to the restaurant he usually goes to. We sat down, and he says, well, what bottom deal do you use? And I showed him. And to make a long story short, I do my bottom deal differently now, too. Yeah. So I did it for him, and he says, okay, here's what you have to do for the center deal. And I watched him do it. And he says, now you got to put your hands like this. And he was showing me one that was done with the step. And I looked at it, and I said, I can't do that. And he looked at me, and he says, you're right, you can't do that. I said, well, thanks, Ed, for all the help. But what he was saying was, you tell yourself you can't do it. Oh. You can't do it.
Interesting.
Yeah. He was very,
that's an important lesson right there.
Oh, very important lesson. And I loved being at the round table. He was one of the few guys I ever knew. He had a lot of stuff in print. Yeah. And yet I told him, you know what? I was working on this book the trick out of the Cardition, and I'd explain it to him, and it might take him a second or so. And he said, "Oh yeah," and he'd do it. Mm-hmm. It was just amazing. And
the repertoire in his mind was just endless.
Yeah. And he was very funny with people at the table who all had different interests. You know, mine were like false deals. Some people like to pass and stuff. And he knew what everybody's favorite thing was, and he'd fool you with it.
With your own
his
specialty.
Sleight of, when I met him, he was like 63 when I met him. Mm-hmm. And his sleight of hand was impeccable. Impeccable. You know, you'd watch the trick. And when I'm sure Howard would tell you the same thing about Vernon. You'd watch a trick, and you'd have no clue as to what just transpired.
When did he die? How old was he?
91 he died.
Okay.
And he was born in 13.
Okay.
Yeah, so about 78.
I can only imagine if he and Harry Lorraine got together with their endless knowledge that they'd probably still be here doing tricks. Yeah. Everything different.
That was another that you mentioned. That was another great thing about being a member of the Round Table, because anybody that came through Chicago would come to the Round Table to see Ed. So that's where I first met Rocker Bomber. I met Harry Lorraine there. I met who was? Man, I can't think of his name. He published 7 Secrets.
J.C. Wagner. Yeah.
J.C. Wagner came. Yeah, I met so many people through that that round table was great.
Now, the Chicago Round Table is different from that Round Table. Is that correct, or is it still part of the? When I think of the picture of the Chicago Round Table that was that drawing by Salvo, or I've forgotten his name. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, it's changed over the years.
Yeah, I know there are different people that come and gone from
right.
that.
I mean, at one time, Eddie's best friend Carmen, D'Amico, he was part of the Round Table, and then when I was part of the Round Table from '75 to '80.
Right.
And in the late 70s is when I first met Bill Malone, and he started coming to the Round Table.
Yeah.
And then there was Bill and a group of different guys that hung out for a while with Ed. And it's just transpired from one decade to the next decade.
Wow. Well, we could stand here or sit here for a while probably talking about a lot of stories, about all that. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate the stories.
No problem. My pleasure.
Jim Molinari. I think we should finish with Howard Hamburg. Howard, why don't you come over and have a seat then as well? We'll wrap it up with Howard then. It'll be a nice evening here. All right. I know we had Howard earlier than this evening, and so Owie, I like to say Owie, because Vernon left off the D, I'll just leave off the H. I'll just call you Owie. So.
You brought up Gazzo's name?
Yeah, brought up Gazzo's name, yes?
Actually, he's doing fairly well.
He is doing better now?
Yeah, he's had... I talked to him. He's going back to
London. You put the mic a little closer there.
He's going back to London, and he's had physical therapy. He's doing well.
Oh, good then. Okay.
But I do have a Gazzo story.
Let's hear it.
You mentioned the fact he had the first stroke.
Yeah.
I was at the Magic Castle. Tony Giorgio was my friend for 53 years. And Tony said to me, let's hit these guys up for some money. Mm-hmm. So he gave me a bag, and I put in $40, and Tony put in 100, and we went our separate ways through the castle trying to collect money.
Yeah.
So then we got about $675. That was pretty good. It was a Monday night, and we hit all these guys up.
Yeah.
He says, come on, we're going to go over Wednesday and give it to him. And I said, I can't. I've got a commitment. So... on Friday, I called Gazzo, and his mother and father had come in from England, and I knew them. And I said, I'd like to come over and spend some time with Gazzo. Is it all right? He said, sure. So I get over there, and I brought some cake that they like, and they were making coffee and tea. Mm-hmm. And we sat in the living room for a half an hour. And I said to Gazzo, so help me, I said, Gaz, I said, wasn't that incredible that such short notice, Tony Giorgio was able to collect $2,240? And I thought he was going to have another stroke. So that's Gazzo's favorite story.
Got him. That's very good. One of the people I know you talk about, Charlie Miller and Larry Jennings and of course, Vernon and others. I don't hear a lot of stories about Johnny Platt. I remember being at the castle one time, and one of the waitresses was talking about and seeing Johnny kind of sitting over there on his own, and Vernon was surrounded by you and everybody else, just kind of his in his orbit. But there was just a lady saying, there was a gentleman who was also financially responsible for Di for a long time. I can't think of what his name is.
Well, Bill Bowers.
Bill Bowers, the guy I'm trying to think of. Thank you. Yeah, the Bill kind of worked with him, but he said, Johnny needs to have somebody like Bill, someone to take care of him. And then, anyhow, Johnny didn't last too much longer.
Someone asked me one time, who do I consider a great entertainer at the Magic Castle? I said, Johnny Platt.
Wow.
Johnny would have his little valise next to him, do a packet trick. While they're applauding, he's resetting it. But he he finished with the Indian cups and balls. He did it really beautiful.
Oh yeah,
that's right. But he was wonderful. What a great performer.
And he worked in Chicago also, Jimmy. And what was the name of the place? The Palmer House. Yeah. And I understand that he used to do a vanishing birdcage, and I'm told that it's not like what Walter Blaney's is, but his was much smaller. Did you ever see him, Jimmy? Or did you ever see him do a vanishing birdcage then, Howie? No, but I understand he did that sitting down at the table. So he performed Chicago style, seated at the table, like that, as he was doing working at the Palmer House.
When you mentioned the birdcage, Blackstone Jr., I loved his line. He's got all the kids holding his arms in his hand. It disappears. And he said, would you like to see it again? And they said, yes, I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you mentioned something about, Bill was talking about the books and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And one of Vernon's sayings was, if you want to keep anything a secret in magic, put it in print.
Put it in print.
Yeah.
I thought that was Jay Marshall's line. That's Vernon's?
Well, who knows?
Oh, no. They both claim it.
They're both gone.
That's right. That's right. But he said it very often then as well. So some other people who were kind of in that orbit. You had mentioned Tony Giorgio, and Tony used to have a column, I think, in Genie Magazine way back when too. Also, didn't he?
You know, you bring Larry Jennings' name up and Tony's, right?
Yeah, those two guys got along like oil and water, didn't they?
Yeah, oil and oil. And Tony wrote this article. Well, one night I was sitting at the end of the bar with Tony. We were having a glass of wine, and he was entertaining these three women that were in the industry. I think Warner Brothers or
that kind of industry. Okay, not
Paramount or something. And he was going out with the card, hold my wrist, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And they weren't that appreciative of it because they've seen all this magic all night long.
Sure.
And I'm sitting to Tony's left, and I said, go south with it. Go out with it, in other words. Mm-hmm. So he had her select a card. His hand dropped. I took it. He's still talking with him, and I go over to the, how you go the stairs. There's a women's room over there. Mm-hmm. And I knocked on the door. I said, janitorial. And there was no answer. And I went in the women's room, and I put the card in the toilet seat in one of the stalls.
Yeah.
And I sat back. I sat down. He's still talking to him. I said, toilet seat, women's room. Now, we would double-cross each other every so often, but I didn't want to do that there.
Right.
So he says, your card's gone. And he shows the decks. The card's gone. He says, appear anywhere. The kitchen, maybe the dining room, woman's room. Which one? Well, what do you think a woman would say?
Yeah.
She's safe with that. A woman's room. He says, go. He says, where? To the woman's room. She comes out screaming. It was. I mean, he never left the bar. It was the greatest trick in the world. Segue. 6 months later, Tony and I are having a glass, and a fellow comes in, a member with his fiance.
Uh-huh.
And he said, Mr. Hamburg or Mr. Giorgio, would you mind doing something for my fiance? I'd really like that. And Tony, there was a deck of cards sitting on the bar. And Tony looked at the deck. I looked at the deck. We knew what to do. That was going to be it. Select a card.
Sure.
Well, the place, I went out. He went out with it. I took it. And Daryl was friendly with, was standing near the fireplace. And I said, I can't get into the women's room. The place is mobbed. I said, would you just put that in the toilets, on the toilet seat, and steer the lady in the yellow dress over there if you could? She said, sure. So the card's gone. Could be the library, could be this, the woman's room, you name it. She said, woman's room.
Okay.
And she says, okay, what do I do in the woman? She says, your card's in the woman's room. You just picked the woman's room. So she goes out. She comes back, Scott, screaming. She was whiter than your socks.
Yeah.
The place, no one would talk. They thought someone was hallucinating or something. And she's trembling, holding her signed card. Mm-hmm. 5 stools down is Larry Jennings. And Larry says, what happened? I told her where any place you can find it. She's picked the ladies' room. It was on the toilet seat. And I never left the bar. Mm-hmm. And Larry said, damn it. And he slammed his hand down on the bar. My wine actually lifted. Boom,
Yeah.
He says, that's my trick. I invented card to urinal. Now, you can look in the magazine. You will find that story exactly written the way I just told it. So at the end of the article, Tony writes, for card to urinal belongs to in order to keep magic history safe. Correct.
Yeah.
Card to urinal belongs to Tony Giorgio. But card to woman's toilet seat belongs to Howard Hamburg in Tony, Georgia.
It's in print. It's in there. So it's and again,
it's in the. That's,
so it's lost to history because it's in print then someplace. You mentioned also briefly about Francis Carlyle. He was instrumental in some of my early card magic. I loved everything in the book of his magic, and I did like everything for a long time at restaurants and things. Still, I got a few things that are from that my repertoire that were from there. He, as I understand, was an alcoholic. I mean, so he was.
What happened, Scott, is he was working a cruise ship. His brother, who was in New York in an apartment, fell asleep while he was smoking, and there was a big fire
on the ship.
No, in the apartment.
I'm
where
sorry.
His brother was. By the time he got back to New York, his brother had died, and he became an alcoholic right there. And he made up some beautiful poetry. I mean, he it was wonderful. If you have time, I'll share another story about him.
You got time, folks? Sure. Okay.
So, Vernon and Francis and I were sitting at the table. He was going to do Francis was going to do a lecture for the magician members in the close-up room.
Yeah.
When it was announced, like a month before, that was it. I mean, boom, everyone wanted to see Francis. So the professor says, here, why don't you introduce him, Howard? I says, no, you were in New York with him. You should introduce him. So Francis says, well, you guys have your regular seats, because we sat in a special spot up there in the top row. And he said, about 15 minutes in, I'm going to ask the magician to select a card. And then it's going to go back in the deck, and I'm going to say the following to all the magicians. Don't take your eyes off the deck. Well, about 15 minutes later, select a card, boom, boom. Don't take your eyes off the deck. I don't know if can you hear me without the mic?
I can hold it up to you.
Francis is holding the deck here.
Okay.
At waist level.
Yeah.
And he goes like this, like
a little jostle,
yeah, like a little
twitch.
He goes like this, and I saw 25 sets of eyes go straight up, and he called it bouncing their eyes off the deck.
Okay.
He just did this, and everyone looked straight. It's like going for your glasses.
Amazing.
But he just did this, and then he turns to the professor and me, and he says, "Next, I'm going to talk about misdirection." He was great. He was wonderful.
One other guy that I, before we start to close over here, who was instrumental in the beginning of the Magic Castle years, whose picture is there in the close-up gallery, is Joe...
Casari?
Not Casari, no. Is Joe, just a minute. Help me. His picture is right there in the close-up gallery.
Well, you got Charlie Miller in the close-up.
I know, but he's holding the 7 of diamonds.
Oh, J. Ossie.
Not Joe, but J.
J. Ossie. Yeah, J. Ossie's holding the 7 of diamonds on the back wall.
Right.
Yeah.
Because when I was working there, I was doing a trick and ended up with 7 diamonds and had everybody turn around and look.
Yeah, my grandfather's guy.
Yeah. So, you got some stories about Jay? Did you know him back then?
Jay, my God, Jay, if it wasn't for J. Ossie, Tony Giorgio, and Albert Goshman, I don't think the Castle League existed.
Wow. That's quite a statement.
Because these guys put it on the map.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People came back night after night to see them.
Absolutely. And Jay had a tremendous memory. Mm-hmm. And he would meet you and talk, and do you have any kids? Yeah, I could, you mentioned your daughters. Oh, going to school. 6 months later, hey, how's your daughter? She graduated yet? And that sort of stuff. When you mention Albert, he did something I've never seen a magician do it anywhere.
Really?
I'd be sitting at the Vernon table, and Albert's working the close-up room. People are lined up because they're cleaning the room up. You know how, right?
Right.
And he'd come out with a program.
Okay.
And he would look around like a tourist for 20 seconds.
Okay.
Call over the host of the room and say, fella in the blue tie to my left, lady in the red dress to my right. He didn't want to pick anyone that was drunk. He didn't want to pick anyone that had a drink in their hand.
Right.
He didn't want to pick anyone that was boisterous or shy. And in 20 seconds, he knew how important those people were at that table. That's exactly what he did for every show.
He'd come out and he would nail it every time. He knew exactly
Yep,
who.
yeah, he'd
and they
just
were
look
perfect.
around and he just listened and watch them for about 20 seconds. He knew.
Huh.
Yeah.
Who were standing in line,
Yeah,
already
standing in line.
ready to come to his next
Yeah.
show.
And he'd tell the host, lady in the blue dress, to my left, not to my right, to my left. And the fellow in the...
It made a difference, too, because the way that he would put that under the salt shaker,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
to the side and everything then, too.
You know, he only did like 3 or 4 things. He did he closed with the Divano deck, and he did sponge balls, and he did the coins under the salt shakers. And I asked him once, what do you attribute your success? He says, Howard, every day I try to think, I do those 3 things better than anybody, and I've done it for 35 years. Every day I think, how can I make it better? Every single day.
Wow.
Yeah.
The first time I went to the Magic Castle, Bruce Servan was in the close-up room, and I was rather disappointed because he was doing sponge balls and hopping halves, and I thought, I can do that. You know, I mean, it wasn't until later I started thinking about the presentation of it. I was just looking at an early age in my magic career of tricks, you know, and those were tricks I understood. He wasn't doing expert sleight of hand that I had heard this Bruce Servan was good at.
But he had that edge to him, and you know, a little condescending to people, and it was one of Vernon's favorite jokes that I made up one time. I said, 2 spectators who had just come out of the close-up room after seeing Bruce Servan.
Yeah.
One turned to the other and said, you know, that effing a-hole is good.
That's a good one. I could see why Vernon would like that as well. Well, Howie, thank you very much. I appreciate you being a guest. And I want to thank each of my guests very much. Thank you guys for being here then tonight. Thank you for sticking around. And I want to thank everybody. If you guys who are still here, by the way, that if you can come back over, I want to take a picture with everybody. So Alan and Mike and Trudy, if you can come back over here, and a few people who just want to get a picture, then if we can. So listen, again, thank you guys, and tomorrow morning I guess we'll see you over at breakfast here as well. And I want to thank Randy Kalin very much. Thank you for the introduction. And so that's it for this episode. This is Scotty out. Thank you.
Scott, thank you.